Yo, yo, yo. Welcome back, good people. Welcome back to the Inner Storyteller. Welcome back to your real life. And yeah, my name is Soul Expression, if you will. It is super great to be with you guys and to be here with the one and only Sara Corss, the guestess with the bestest. Um, Before we get into everything, just got to take care of course, the housekeeping for the channel. Tell you a little bit about what we're going to talk about, and we're going to bring Sara on. So, as you know, as you should know, click that like button, click that thumbs up, because when you do, I heard through the grapevine, okay, I heard through the snake line that when you click the like button, Barney's coming right behind you, and he's gonna give you the biggest hug, and you're just gonna feel so much love and so much warmth. It's gonna be awesome. I heard. That's what I heard. I heard from somebody. If it doesn't work, then just try again. Like the video 10 times. Also, subscribe to the channels if you can. I do one day want to monetize this thing, and can't do that if YouTube doesn't know that people are subscribed to my stuff. So please subscribe to the channels. Now, no, if you are here, please remember, if you are here, you are in for real conversations, good people. Okay? We talk about natural law, talk about religion, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the great. We talk about money, anarchy, culture, and how mankind is manipulated, sometimes from the shadows, sometimes in the public, by forces that do not have our best interests at heart, perhaps because they are completely evil. But we are not bashing faith systems here, good people. We are simply examining psychological affects and effects of the stories that we have the most faith in and how those stories help shape society. But that examination has to sit right alongside an honest look at the current human condition, which is slavery. Government is slavery, good people. And the question we have to keep coming back to, at least on this channel, is what can actually be improved with a proper understanding of the inner storyteller and how it works. So thank you so very much for tuning in. I have a super special guest, former hostess of Time Strider Radio and a couple other things. Sara Corss, how are you? How's it going?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You like that energy boost from from 2 seconds ago? You know how I do. Um, Very excited to have you on. You happy to be here? We're gonna get into some stuff today, as you know. Um, how this how I want this to go. How I want this to go is I want to actually react to a little video where somebody is going to talk about the healthcare system in general in the language of something that's going on right now and how he feels about it. Get your kind of general reaction and whatnot. But first, of course, we'd love to hear who you are, what you do, what you like to do, all of that good stuff.
Well, my name is Sara Corss. I have a bit of a background in more like voluntary activism in the sense where I kind of started because it directly pertains to myself is in the medical world and really more about um, chronic patients mainly obviously to do with cystic fibrosis since that is the condition that I was born with. So
Mm,
but really just more of this sense that people got to understand that like how I kind of operate is not really like how other people operate where it's all about let's bring awareness. It's more like no, instead of like all this like hyper awareness, which is all well and good because it brings like the attention over to much needed things that need to be paid attention to. But the thing that always is missing in these like activism stuff when it comes to like medical stuff is that it kind of takes out the person themselves, like the individuals become lost in the fray of like looking for, spreading awareness for whatever thing, the individuals that are actually like experiencing it on a day-to-day basis kind of get like drowned in it and sort of forgotten. So like
Mm-hmm.
the way I kind of operate is really with that kind of mindset, is that like people need to be treated like people first, and whatever, details about them, like the parameters that their physical bodies are currently in health wise, are just as important, but it's not who that person actually is. It's just like something
Right.
that needs to be handled. So that's always the issues that I have kind of faced. And so like primarily that's kind of where I started in quote activism in, stuff like this, is really with just the health, more of the health realm,
Mm-hmm.
and fighting, well, really more just like holding your own and like teaching people how to hold their own, and be the individual person that they are, be the person that they are, instead of being the like condition that they are, because people get like toppled over like, oh, I've got such and such condition, right? So and then they become that instead of who they are, which is a little bit of what we're going to discuss.
Right. Some bloke with
So
an osis.
right,
Right.
and so it's like it becomes, oh, the poor thing, and then it becomes this like, that's like that, we can get into it a little bit
Yeah.
later, but that's
Awesome.
like, that's primarily where I started. I
Mm-hmm.
did do, well, I still do have a radio show called Time Strider Radio, which is
Oh,
on,
okay. I keep saying former. My bad.
yeah, which is still on YouTube. I was with the network, but I kind of pulled away from that because it was sort of holding me back, so that I could
Ah.
expand a little bit more freely with my time. And so I do produce. It's mainly about history and spirituality and, medical stuff, and like a lot to do with history, because I feel like even all this stuff that you talk about,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people who might listen to you talk about, like, really it all makes more sense if people like actually studied
Knew their
history.
history. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like
I
history is like
completely
really
agree.
important, so it's
Yeah.
it's part of the whole thing. So like I do a lot of research and study into history and stuff like that, and I write a lot about that, which is what the show is for.
Absolutely. That's amazing, and it's called Time Strider Radio, correct?
Yes.
They can get to it through your link tree.
Yes.
Nice, nice. So as y'all can see, the link tree is there. We go. Just Linktree/Sara_Corss, very similar to ours. And we are going to take a look at this video here. It's actually more. It's more maybe aligned with what we're going to talk about than than I thought at first. I thought this was kind of like a aside, a nice little, you know, 3 4 minute reaction, but he's actually going to touch on some of the stuff that that you just named. So let's check this out. I'm gonna let it run for his video. Then his time is gonna end, and then I'll stop. We'll take a gander at what he's talking about.
Healthcare didn't break. We turned it into custom systems and started acting more like businesses. Now your job isn't just to treat patients, it's to keep them happy. So now you're expected to keep them alive, keep them comfortable, and make sure they leave a 5-star review. Even if you're understaffed, even if they're disrespectful, even if the situation isn't safe. That's how you get a system where bad behavior isn't just tolerated, it's rewarded. Because the customer experience matters more than the staff. And then everyone acts confused when nurses and CNAs are quitting in droves. Tell me I'm wrong.
The United States is
Okay. So and this is a whole this person's channel, a homestead journey. It's definitely worth kind of checking out here. She posts videos from people on Telegram most of the time or Instagram that are explaining things that are kind of going on in various arenas, right? Various fields. And this one is called Nurses and Doctors Are Finally Speaking Out About What's Really Happening. And the first guy's take is in line with the rest of the video, but they also have varying each adjacent takes on quote unquote what's really happening. What's your initial reaction to what he just laid out there?
Well, I think it's interesting, especially with. I mean, I'd almost encourage doctors and nurses, especially nurses, to speak out about the bad behavior that takes place in hospitals, because people don't really realize, unless you're in that environment, like often enough, there's so much. It's like being in middle school in
Hmm.
a certain kind of way, where there's all kinds of like, there's still clicky groups, and there's still like this like mentality with certain fields of medicine. Like it's really weird, and it's kind of ridiculous to some
Hmm.
extent. So you have like certain kinds, um, you have certain kinds of. Is that really loud?
Uh, it's noticeable. It's there. I don't want
Yeah.
to. Yeah, I don't want to
Okay.
make you feel weird, but yeah, we can
No,
hear it.
that's okay. I can actually turn it up.
Okay, for sure.
It's sorry.
She's gonna hit the button on her AC real quick, but yeah, there is a real problem here with
There we
with how
go.
the bad behavior is addressed. Yes,
Yeah.
indeed.
So it's just been crazy hot
Oh, yeah, yeah,
outside.
for sure.
So yeah. So bad behavior does not. It kind of really doesn't get
Highlighted.
highlighted, and
Yeah.
like if you like, so here's really the dynamic. Say you're a chronic patient in the hospital, or any kind of patient in the hospital, where it's like a one-time thing or it's like all the time. The only way that changes within a hospital take place, to any extent, if they're going to take place, in my experience, is if the patient gets loud about it.
Hmm.
The patient has to say something about it. They don't listen to like the people who are running the show in hospitals, like, are really the administrators
Yep.
and not necessarily doctors. They have a doctorate because they went to medical school, but it's medical administration. It's more of the business side of it. And most of them are not doctors, or at least they're not all doctors. But the people who are like operating facilities, they don't listen to nurses. They don't listen to doctors. They don't listen to any of the other staff members. They barely listen to patients.
Right.
They only listen to patients when patients get loud. And so I had to actually, like, sometimes people ask me, like, how did you, like, build this like firm stance that
Hmm.
you hold? And it's because I had a lot of practice being forced almost by like, natural inclination to hold my ground and hold my own. And if something wasn't right, I said something about it, and I didn't let it go. And
Hmm.
so I've even had nurses and doctors tell me, like, I mean, not all nurses and doctors are bad. I just like, I need
No.
to get that out of the way, because there are
Yeah.
people who throw the baby out with the bathwater, and they don't understand that it's just another business model. And we're going to go into that a little bit later. But
Absolutely.
um like they have said to me, like, you're the one who has to say something about it, and you can't be coy about it. And I'm like, well, I can do that. I'm not shy.
Bet.
So I'm not very shy. So like I don't think that's one of my traits, being coy.
Yeah.
So, and every time I've actually said something, usually I get my way.
Hmm.
And like what he was talking about, at least that's what I was understanding what he was talking about, is that because healthcare is not necessarily about treating the sick necessarily anymore the way it used to be. it's a business model, which we're going to
Mm-hmm.
go into a little bit. You have administrators who will go with the like customers always right nonsense. And it is nonsense because the customer in this case is not always right. The people who are looking for the service of healthcare, they don't even like pre-research whatever it
Right.
is that's wrong with them before they go talking to a doctor. They don't research after talking about a doctor. So doctors are they've kind of got their hands tied in
Yeah.
a certain sense because and not I'm not saying all doctors are good. They're not. I've met so many different types of doctors with so many different types of
Mm-hmm.
personalities.
Yeah, especially hospital
Um
doctors, unfortunately.
there's
They got
bad
their
ones and
own,
there's good ones.
yeah, they got their own rap sheet of
But
allegations, if you will.
the majority of them that are working in the field are just like exhausted.
Yeah.
They're exhausted because they're like, I'm damned if I do, I'm damned if I don't. I can't say what's the full truth
Right.
with my patient, which is what doctors should be doing. And I can't withhold anything because that's illegal.
And
And,
if I can add to this list a little bit, and I'm 100% incentivized to de-emphasize anything that does not increase my profit. Right? Doesn't mean that every single doctor is 100% looking uh uh uh, uh how to say participating in the system in that way where they're maximizing their profit at the expense of others, but there's too many that are. And I think a part of that has to do with I don't think it's a big secret anymore that doctors and nurses are lied to in school. That they
oh,
go
yeah.
through this grueling schooling, almost torturous schooling process for some personalities. For some personalities, it's just a pretty difficult thing. But for others, it's like this. They're all they're crying every day. They finally graduate, and they have no idea that the so-called facts in their textbooks were not examined in the way they may assume. And that leads to a whole lot of that plus the financial and the financial and other side leads to mistrust in the system in general. And I wanted to ask you this question. I know you got lots of notes, and I'm going to let you cook. I might get inspired to interrupt once or twice, but I'm going to let you cook here because it's a big question and a very important one. As you are undoubtedly familiar, there is an ever growing community of tinfoil hats. I'm sure you're in it for some aspects of the topics we explore. I'm definitely deep into the tinfoil community. Um, started off by kind of becoming politically right wing and then waking up out of politics and the legitimacy of masters and rulers altogether. But regardless, I have this memory in my head of how much was shown to be what Candace Owens might call fake and gay. What is just a big lie that we're all supposed to memorize before the time that we graduate high school. And I wanted to ask you because this huge gap in what we're told and what is true, what they are allowed to study and what they are allowed funding to do experiments on, studies on, etc., from the powers that be in their field. Um, the seeds of distrust are sown so deep into the soil. What are some things that us in the tinfoil community exaggerate when it comes to our collective hatred, if you will, of the medical industry? And where do you think that hatred is actually underreacting to what some of what history shows?
Well, I mean, if people actually like read history, especially like medical industry history, and how weird and dark and kind of creepy and bizarre it is, you got a lot going on there. There's just so much in there that it builds up in a way that people don't really know how to like put together in like one piece. So what ends up happening is it's like really a lot of it's very psychological. And because they don't know the details, they only know the bits and pieces, the snippets, the clips. And especially with social media, they get this little clip out of context or this little clip out of context. And like, then they like think they know what is everything to know. But like, really, I think the roots have to actually be addressed first. And so one thing that I'd say people in general exaggerate about the medical community that makes them hate it is this perception that all doctors are villains. So, like, because we have so much dark negative history in the medical world, and I'm not denying that we do, like, it's
Absolutely.
dark out there. But because of that, you have to remember that the only thing that ever really gets highlighted is the darkness. So it's like, because that's exciting, that's interesting, that
We
keeps
love our
people,
drama.
we love the drama. We're just like eating it up. Like, we love it. So it keeps things like interesting for people. Like, and even though people are experiencing outrage over it, it becomes this like kind of addictive problem. So like, I'll go into that a little bit later too, as to why I think that way
Hmm.
it becomes like addictive. But so there's this big perception, especially today, that all doctors across the board are villains. And every single person working in the industry is a villain. And I know people who straight out throw the baby out with the bathwater without thinking first. And I'm going to explain more of that. Um, we do have a history of doctors not practicing medicine ethically. As an example, just to go over, US
Hmm.
government doctors and researchers conducted unethical medical experiments on psychiatric patients. This is just one example. And prison inmates from the 1940s through on into the 70s, often without informed consent. And that's usually going to be the case if people are incarcerated in prison or in like a medical, like an insane asylum kind of facility where they're not allowed to technically leave. It is without consent. Like, we have different laws that help protect us if we're not incarcerated. But it's like the whole idea with like incarceration is that you gave up your rights when you decided to like commit heinous crimes against people.
If you
Like,
did, right.
if you did, if that's the case, which is so still like, I'm not saying that's like fully okay, because there are a lot of people who got convicted who never did anything, and they actually like it was like a trumped up charge. But
Yeah.
there were people who actually did. And, so I have my own mixed feelings about that kind of stuff myself.
Yeah,
So
yeah, for sure. If I can
we,
the there's definitely a tug of war in, okay, people should be held accountable in some, maybe close to uniform way, but
mhm,
also most things that we are just super punitive about in this government game. It's just one size fits all, no
yeah,
questions, put you in the cage or whatever. And
yeah,
there are thousands of innocent people locked up.
yeah.
And it's
Yeah, and
insane. And that,
especially in
yeah.
like the medical world, you get people who get um thrown into institutions or get labeled as a like psych patient, like they get medically stamped as somebody who like has been in a psych ward or whatever, and that like forever controls the rest of like your life. It's like it's on your permanent record. It actually does a lot of damage to people who, like, instead of like getting people treatment, they just like they stamp these people as mentally ill. They've been
Institutionalized.
institutionalized
Hmm.
in a medical facility, and that's on their record forever. So it does quite a lot of damage when in that case where you're trying to actually like, you should be actually trying to heal people. but that's not what happens. Like they don't get real treatment. And there's like, I mean, I could go on for hours about that, but the studies that the US government doctors and research were doing, they were frequently involved intentionally infecting a healthy or vulnerable individuals with diseases to test treatments to or understand transmission, violating the medical principle of first do no harm. So that's like all with like the Hippocratic Oath, and we have like certain laws that like it's a violation, like violating the Hippocratic Oath. And then later on, when we had the Nuremberg Code, which is now a legal document that people can use as far as like, because it was like a whole thing with the Nuremberg Code where they're like, oh, that's not a legal document. It's just, a guidance. And I'm like, no, it can actually be used in court today as a legal document if you are going after something like if somebody violated your medical rights. So, this was violating, like it was violating the medical principle. Like even people who are institutionalized medically or in prison still have medical rights, whatever the crime that it is that they committed.
Right.
So
the human rights that we're all born.
They're protected under HIPAA, generally speaking, like putting aside like inherent God-given rights, they're protected under HIPAA just like everybody else. So technically you can't really do that. But this was also the 40s and the 70s. And we have to consider as well during the time of World War I, where we actually had this stuff was rampant across the world, even in America, where we were medically experimenting on people. And like before we had institutionalized like buildings and it was like a government institution and not like a regular medical facility, before that, when it was just like people practicing medicine, you still had corruption. You still had like wacky doctors who were in asylums and hospital, like doing all kinds of stuff. So
shout out to this Tuskegee experiment,
yeah, or like Eric Traub, who was like a Nazi scientist, and like I mean, there's like a whole thing there. So, and that was during that time frame.
Project Paperclip, I think.
So that's just like one of the examples of like dark medical history that takes place, and that is still fairly recent. Some of the experiments, just like for context, were hepatitis studies. They were doing malaria injections, like infections, like to counter influenza exposure to people and syphilis transmission. So they were using these specifically to experiment on people to see how their biologies were reacting to it, to different treatments. So making people sick in order to give them different types of treatments that they were experimenting with. This is all medical experimentation. And this even happens today because like people, you might have a condition and you have to go in for all kinds of like treatments, right? But because our biologies and our bodies work so like uniquely, like we all have the same kind of foundational structure. But
the dosage,
our biologies work differently. That's why we have side effects. That's why we get side effects. That's why we all have like different problems because of different kinds of treatments. Is because our biologies are all kind of different from each other. So they test out, oh, will this treatment work? Oh, no, this happened to you while you were on the treatment. Let's try this treatment. Let's try this treatment, on and on. So this is all medical experimentation. And it still happens in the modern day, but people don't think about it that way. They don't look at it like that. So that was just with that. We also had talking about institutionalized chronic patients that were thrown into like asylums and stuff. You used to have things like electroshock therapy, lobotomies, which would like just kind of ruin people. And sometimes people survived it, and sometimes people were just like made completely brain dead as a result of
Yeah,
it. They
vegetables.
did this to keep patients quiet so that they could experiment on them without um,
Consent.
problems from the patients.
Yeah.
And this was like a very common practice. They would even like kind of like, I think they also like some places would even like slightly poison you a little bit in your
Hmm.
food. So it kept you like more like, lethargic, like
Yeah.
unable to like really function very well. So like, and that's like another thing we can discuss about, but there's always been like a lot of dehumanization. That's like stuff like gaslighting,
Hmm.
neglect. Certainly, I've certainly experienced that, like neglect from medical professionals who like don't want to deal with me. And it's usually even like what's funny about neglect, it's usually not really the doctors or the nurses doing it, not typically.
Administration.
It's
Hmm.
always like people who work on like the regular staff,
Hmm.
like the people answering the call bell,
Hmm.
or whatever, people like that, people working for the general staff. So like that's
Right.
in my experience, that's like mostly the kind of stuff I've had happen to me as far as like neglect goes. But I don't have like a lot of issues with people messing around too much with me because I've always had a very strong personality. I'm not timid
Yeah.
about
And
my
and like you
health.
said, if the patient is saying it and the patient is loud about it, you might get a more
You,
favorable response. And of
yeah,
course, that depends on the day. Sometimes it depends on the hospital. If you're dealing with a
yep,
hospital that's just full of dark occult members, then you shit out of luck.
absolutely. Or just
There's
lazy
lazy, yeah.
people. It
There's a
could
lot
just
of
be
people
lazy,
in
dumb people,
there's a lot of
honestly.
staff in black neighborhood hospitals that have like rap sheets that they should be fired, but they're not, just like cops.
Yeah,
Um, but
they should.
yeah, um,
Background checks. You know, you don't
it's it's
you
insane. Go
don't
ahead.
need a background check to be a janitor. Anybody can be a janitor. So I mean, not that I'm dissing on janitor work. Like
Yeah.
that's a great job, like any other job. It's well needed.
But it is important that you
But
point out that it's not always the nurses and doctors that kind of when they were 21, 22, finishing college, were getting into something that they wanted to save lives. At least a lot of them in their head, they had this kind of split between I can make a lot of money and I'm going to be helping people.
right, because
And yeah,
the majority of people out there are not. They're not these like dark occult, like
right.
psychopathic, intentionally going out to try to like ruin everybody's life, like, that is a very tiny percentage of the world's population. They make up this tiny little bit. And to me, this is why, to me, I don't pay them any mind. They're nothing to me. They're parasites. Why would I give them any of my time or energy?
Yeah.
Why would I give them any credit for anything? They're parasites. Like, and what do we do with parasites in the medical world as far as health goes? We clean them out.
Right.
We get rid of parasites. We remove them from our environment, our body. So, like, parasites are just, that's something you have to cleanse out of your system. And that's that's why, like, I think the way that I do. I look at it like it's got to be like healthcare, even in our environments. So, and I guess it's like not too many people like really view it my way. I just like look at it more
That's all
medically that
right.
way.
Yeah, we're not
Um,
forcing people to have belief systems here. We just sharing our
yeah.
own takes.
So to move on with the
Hmm.
question, I think people want to assume that all doctors are intending to heal the sick and be generally good people. But because of the environment we have, this assumption quickly turns into hate for doctors and just really the doctors, because their view is like this instead of like looking around them. Um, and for the practice of medicine, and because there is a constant barrage of unethical practices that take place. So because of this, it just like stacks and stacks and stacks, and it weighs on people. So people direct it like this, straight at the doctors, and not looking at the full, your full view here, not having any peripheral vision here, and seeing the bigger picture of it. So people want to look at medical care specialists as people who are there to rescue them. And when it turns out that those specialists can be just as crooked as the next guy, it destroys trust and breaks the illusion. People become angry, resentful, even if what happened helped them ultimately. So like there's this, we're going to get into that. There's like, you have this like a contradiction starting in people's minds. They are assuming, and I would say incorrectly, nobody should assume anything ever. Do your research first. Don't assume stuff. But people are assuming that just because doctors went to medical school, that they know things, that they just know everything and that they can figure everything out.
Right.
And that's just not the case. They're just people like everybody else. And like if people even kept it in their minds, like, well, a doctor technically can like graduate from medical school with a D average. So perhaps we should be looking more closely at people's credentials as when we like take on a doctor. So there's that in it. So it becomes this like sense of betrayal. People get sick, they panic, especially if they're not used to being like, quote, sick. Like I'm very used to my condition. I was born this way.
Yeah,
so
and I never get sick.
Right. I'm used to like this environment for myself. I understand it. Like it's not, there's nothing that surprises me. But what happens when people are not used to being unwell is if they get unwell, knock on wood, that doesn't happen to anybody. But if they get unwell, they freak out, they panic, it's doom and gloom. And they go to the only people who are offering something of a solution. And those people are just as flawed as everybody else because they're just people. They're not deities. So people build up this like idea in their head about medical professionals that they are like the second coming, but really that's the person themselves doing it. That's the patient, quote, customer doing it themselves. No doctor ever promised that they were the solution to your problems.
Right.
And that's the problem people have with it. And so when that doesn't work out the way they are thinking about it in their minds and that illusion gets shattered, it becomes betrayal. And now they're the victim on top of it.
And some of that illusion of the lab coat equals godly knows everything, or whatever, does come from our conditioning in school and media, right? Movies, TV shows, media, all the media, fiction. So yeah, just wanted to
I tell people like stay off social media because like all these little clips that people post up, some of them are real things that are happening, but a lot of it is just like outreach material where people are putting up clips without context. And I mean, it's just, you need to do more like thoughtful research when you're like, look, stay off social media, because the people going onto social media talking about this stuff are maybe not necessarily like the right people to be taking this information from. Because when you become that person who's like completely betrayed and, oh my God, and like, I can't believe this happened to me and blah, blah, blah. And it's this and this. And they're just so overwhelmed with everything that their perspective isn't, fully,
accurate.
Accurate. Yeah. Like you, and we'll get into that. I would just say as like a side note, like we are emotional creatures who think very deeply about things. We take treatment very personally. Pain and suffering is very loud, and it can be very loud for the chronic patient and for anybody who's like new to, being unwell, so it's very overpowering. It's very overwhelming for people, especially when you are constantly being bombarded by it. And when you are unfamiliar with the system, like the medical system, and you suddenly get sick, you're not just bombarded by the problems that the poor health is causing you. You're being bombarded by like the system itself and everything it wants to do to try to help you, or what it's suggesting it can help you with, as well as you not understanding how to be in that system and
How to
like know
navigate.
anything about it. So
Right.
all of that stacks in like a very like kind of a bad way if you let it. So because we feel this way, it makes the betrayal that we end up feeling, so much worse. It just like it's crazy. So it's an overwhelming sense of betrayal, and it can amplify an experience and make it bigger than it might actually be. And I'll get into that a little bit, where it's like subjective. It's not that the experience is subjective, like the experience really happened. It's objective, but the input and the takeaway, I have an example that I'll use too. The
Hmm.
input and the output of what the patient is actually experiencing,
Hmm.
how they take that in, what might be subjective, and how they put that out might be subjective, because they're so like bogged down with everything that they don't know how to put everything together clearly.
Right. And we have a profound effect on our own state.
Right. So like to us it's real.
Yes.
Even though like a lot of it is real, but like we might exaggerate the problem.
Morpheus would say, "Your mind makes it real."
Right. And I think I actually wrote that in here, like
Oh, nice.
the mind makes it real, and that's true. And like I think people like Dr. Ernest Holmes, and Dr.
Hmm.
Joe Dispenza, and people who work in those kind of fields would probably agree with that. The mind makes it real, because it's a very powerful instrument that we have um, at our disposal.
Hmm.
So it ends up being an offense. So I had another note here.
Word. While you bring that up, I'll add a little bit
Yeah.
from my own mind. So yeah, the betrayal cuts so deep, and it's very true that it's better to be careful and to be informed than to be conclusive, based on your anecdotal, um, your position from your anecdotal experience, because the world is such a big place. There's 300 million people here in the United States. There's 9 billion people in the world, and the practice of assuming based on your personal experience will get you kind of blocking your own blessings if you're not careful. At the same
Yeah.
time, none of the outrage is unwarranted or unjustified. And
Right.
there is a
Yeah.
balance that we have to walk when we become, let's say, like truth tellers, or we get on and we share our experiences, maybe not to lead with the conclusive language about all doctors, all the entire industry, and just be a little more specific and intentional.
Yes.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
My father this February just passed away, and it sucks, and we are exploring the possibility of remedy for malpractice, as he did see somebody a couple times and they reported nothing about what ultimately took him out,
Yeah.
and whatnot. So we're looking into that. Obviously, I can't say anything if there's going to be an active something that comes after this. I don't even really want to say the word case.
I would
But
definitely look into it. Yeah, and
yeah,
do all your research. Make sure you have like whatever documents he had, whatever things he said,
we got everything. We got
well
everything.
documented. Yeah.
I just wanted to say that there is a big, there is an importance to what you're saying about being careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but also to be informed in how to navigate and how to advocate for yourself.
Right.
This industry.
Because
Big Sis has left a couple comments that I did want to see if you could respond to, Sarah. The
yep.
first one, she said, I think a lot of very related to what I was just talking about. I think a lot of the outrage is justified and based on people's real world contact with doctors. I experienced it repeatedly for myself. And related to the same comment, medical care is the leading cause of death in this country. So the problem is very real and very serious.
Oh
What does
yeah,
that kind of make you think of? Yeah.
absolutely. Like I'm just careful with using terminology like outrage, and like the way I would suggest, because all that stuff is true. There is a lot of unethical medical malpractice that takes place. The only way to combat it is that people know, they hold their ground, they know their rights under God and under the system that we have with, because that's the system we have, like your HIPAA rights. You got to know these laws. You want to know what the actual laws are for man's law, because they won't violate that. Even if they try to violate your God-given rights, if you hold your ground, they ain't going to violate that. Even if they tell you that they will, they won't. And those that do, they can be prosecuted for that. And so like I totally fully support going after unethical practicing medical professionals, because that's what makes it all worse. And so yeah, like people, like the only way to combat bad medical practice is to hold your ground and do it firmly and know the information. And like I always suggest to people, I'm like, yes, this is outrageous. Yes, this is wrong on like every single level. Yes, this should not have happened, and there should have never been a reason for it to happen. However, these things they do happen. And so when people come to me all the time telling me about their medical story, and it's just like something that has always kind of happened, probably because they feel like I can relate with them pretty clearly. Like I understand that world. And I always try to suggest to people that when these things happen, that you have to put your emotions in regards to it aside for a second, and you need to be very clear, very concise, go in with your full armor. And when you come in to make a claim against some kind of medical malpractice, you need to have your thoughts, emotions, and actions in order. You need to go in it like, I ain't playing around. I'm here for business. I'm not here for an apology. I'm not here for like whatever it is you think you're going to say to me to make it better. Here's the information. And that's it. You have to come in and be the boss. And I always try to suggest that to people. Like, yes, it hurts. And like all that psychological stuff that takes place within us when these things happen to us, they are very difficult to deal with emotionally and psychologically. And you're just like, there's that thing in your head where you're like, I can't believe people would like be like this. I can't believe somebody would do that. But the only reason why we have that thought in our head, and I know so many people, and they all tell me they've had that thought immediately, they forget that psychopathy is real, and that they forget that those people can be bought. They forget that not everybody has the same ethical or moral grounding that you might. Like they don't hold. So like they don't hold the same values you do, because
they don't have the same capacity for empathy.
They don't have the same capacity if they're like a genuinely born psychopath, and it's kind of been stripped out of them. If they are secondary psychopaths and they're like atheists, most doctors in the medical field are atheists.
Yep.
So it's that's why you get a lot of that. And
they didn't all used to be.
Even in emergency rooms, like, people end up being incapacitated. They can't speak. That's why do not ever go into an emergency room. I would suggest no medical facility. Do not ever, I mean, unless you're very like clear about your environment, about what you're in, don't go into an emergency room alone. ever, if you can help it, take somebody with you or have a recording device at least. Because even if you become incapacitated, like I have this little recording device
Mm-hmm.
that you can just voice activated, and it like, it's just you don't know it's a recording device, but you can just have stuff like that as well. Because even if you're by yourself and you're recording stuff, there's something there, but I would say if you can help it, do not go into emergency rooms by yourself for any reason. I'd say if you
Right.
can, take somebody with you. Especially if you were in like a second or third world country, I would definitely suggest that. But I would suggest that in probably any hospital. Um,
So, mhm,
go in. You're allowed to protect yourself. If they say, "Oh, you can't come in here," that's not true. That's a lie. If they're like, "Oh, our policies don't matter. Hospital policies do not matter. They're built by administrators who are not doctors and nurses necessarily,
or
and
legislators.
or legislators. Hospital policies do not matter. And in any policy in any building, policies do not matter. They do not trump the
Law.
the HIPAA laws in this
Right.
country, period. And so even though we have to like adhere to that to make that work, that's like part of holding the line. Like policies don't matter. It doesn't matter what the policy
Yeah.
says. So like
Very, very
that's
important point. I'm gonna
yeah.
chop in here real quick. Very important point that you raise, and it's a good kind of transition into some of your notes that you sent me a little further down the line. So I may be skipping you ahead a little bit, but I'm looking at how long the live has been. Definitely invite you back. This is very informative, and we're getting really great engagement as far as the comments. Big sis, thank you so much for your participation. Nick, shout out to you. Thank you for your comments and participation. We do not know. I don't know if they're bringing back the asylums with the with the lobotomies, but uh, in light of what you just went over, you say here that I think is a good thing to transition into right now. The perception shouldn't be that the medical industry is there to solely benefit the public, but just another institutionalized business model that an individual has the free will choice in whether or not they participate in it. Um,
Yes.
I think that's a good point, and I'll kind of drop you off here in your notes.
Yeah. So, yes, exactly. So, like, that's the thing. Like I said before, like doctors in the medical industry, they never promised or guaranteed any kind of saving whatsoever. We assumed that all they did was provide a service that we can choose to participate in or not. So, yes, the perception shouldn't be that the medical industry is there solely to benefit the public. It's just another institutionalized business model. And so we have the free will choice on whether we're going to participate in that or not. And that's all us. That's us. And they know it. So the business model provides a desired service, not a guaranteed solution, like we have been discussing. The general perception that most people will have is that they don't have a choice because they are sick. But in reality, we always have a choice, even in the darkest of days. You can
Right.
get up and walk away at any time, and they have to allow you, and they will allow you to do that. And the industry knows this. It's part of the model of institutionalized care. That's why there are consent forms. That's why you need to have copies of every single consent form you choose to sign and read them. Read what they say. Take the time. Don't rush through it. There's time. That is you. When you sign a consent form, it's you confirming, you, the individual, not them. It's not, you are confirming that this is just an option and you are willing to allow them to experiment on you in order to find a possible solution for your problem. It's not a guarantee. There's nowhere in any consent form that says it's a guarantee. They are not really lying to us. They're saying, we're providing a service. Here's the parameters. Do you agree or disagree? Up to you, your choice. And we have the right to refuse that at any time, even if, and that's like what's funny, what's written into these consent forms, they even double down on it. If you sign these consent forms and you choose halfway through afterwards to back out of it, they will let you because they have to. And that's all part of it. It's all part of the legalese in there. You can get up and be like, nope, never mind, I'm leaving. And they'll be like, and like they can sit there and guilt trip you into staying all you want and make you, oh, well, blah, 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 blah. You know, they get, you know, try to appeal to that emotional state that you're in. But you can be like, no, it's cool. And, you know, I'm out of here. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've walked out of a hospital because I'm like, I'm done. I'm finished with whatever you're doing. You know, so we have to be honest about these things too. And really like understand what's really happening on both sides of this aisle when you're talking about how the system works.
Speaking of walking out when it's time to walk out, there's a very scary thing that has to do with this comment from my wife. Tensi says, "Thank you for having this conversation!" Exclamation point. I would love to hear your perspective on how mothers can advocate for themselves in the hospital settings as well as during birth or the whole birthing process, and I'm sure you know the postpartum visitations. Because one of the things that we do see on social media is a lot of, and I mean, somebody could do 2 or 3 TikTok and Instagram video reactions to this happening a day and like have a podcast for years. Is mothers, fathers, families that they just received, you know, their child, and their first kind of checkup on the child came back as everything is cool so far, and then they don't want to let the family leave with their child, and of course the mother is not going to be at her strongest. The father is not going to be at his calmest when they're told you can't leave, when they're being held hostage. And oftentimes you will see either a peace officer or hospital, you know, security that uses their hands and feet to keep people in or whatever. And I'm going to acknowledge that I'm not trying to put you, Sarah, on the spot for answering what's a one size fit all solution to this happening in all hospitals. What's the one thing people have to do and then it goes away? But I do want to acknowledge I've seen far too many little videos where people turn on their camera and they're literally being held hostage in the room that they
I'd
gave
say
birth in.
good on them for thinking to turn on that camera, and everybody should be doing that. And, you know, just to like cover that question really quick. Yeah, like, you know, and then, you know, maybe hopefully we could do like a part 2 or something like that.
Yeah, I gotta have you back. This is probably gonna be the last like formal answer to something, and I'll tell the audience there are more notes here for this one question. Okay, good people, there are more notes. We're going back in, you know, probably next Wednesday. Stay tuned. But yeah, birthing process, postpartum. What you got?
So first, I would say be aligned, have your thoughts, emotions, and action. Like this would be the first step, I would say, for any mother or any parent generally, but especially any mother who's pregnant and about to have a baby or going into a hospital, for things for people to consider. Have your thoughts, emotions, and actions in order. I know that's hard when we're pregnant because, you know, we're, well, you know, scatterbrained. Things can get wacky when you're pregnant. So
Can they? No idea.
So first, because we know that that's a condition that can take place, we as women have to take the personal responsibility to keep our thoughts, emotions, and actions in order and in line, and not just know, but embody what our God-given rights are. On top of that, understand what man's law is when it comes to your medical rights, when it's written. Not that I'm saying we need all the laws. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that's the system we're in. Right. These are part of the tools you need to fight with. Understand what HIPAA is. Understand what the federal medical laws are in our country or whatever country you're in. Be very clear about what they are. Like, write it down, save it in your phone, have it in a notebook, like save it. Like, don't just read it, like have the information there for you. because when you go prepared and you understand exactly that information, you're more untouchable. And even if they give you pushback and they like mess with you, eventually they have to like leave you alone, because if they push you too hard, they could lose their job. You could prosecute them and you'd have grounds to it, and record everything. Of course, record everything. So those are just some things I would say for anybody going into a hospital or any medical facility or any kind of situation where you
Right.
might have like to deal with some, trouble. Um, it can be very difficult. Like, now, the other thing to understand is like, yeah, you can go to a hospital to have your baby. They're going to charge you because it's a service that they are offering that you can either participate or not participate in. Or you could do it more naturally, have your babies at home. Dude, women have been doing that for thousands of years.
A lot longer than there's been hospitals.
A lot longer than there's been institutionalized hospitals. Like, dude, we got this. Like, so, it's not like whatever, like there are women, they just like pop out a baby and like continue the housework. It's just
That's
like
true.
we're stronger than we think, but we have a society that like has conditioned women to think that we're like weaker somehow, or we're like less capable. We need to have these like middlemen, whatever, nurses or doctors or
Yeah.
whatever facilities in order to produce a baby
Natural
out in the
things.
world. Like,
Right.
like we didn't need them when we were conceiving the baby. Why would we need them when we're like actually like delivering the baby?
Fear.
So it's like, it's a,
Yep.
brainwashing into that. So, I mean, like, I understand, like, there are some situations maybe you do actually really need to be in a medical facility to have a baby because of whatever condition you might have. I was one of those people. Like, I was lucky to be able to produce one child. But for the most part, I'd say women should have their babies at home. And a doctor, like, if you're really like fighting a doctor, oh, the doctor's saying you have to do this before you come in, you have to sign the consent form when you go in to have a baby. That gives them license to do almost whatever they want, and that's why they'll fight you on it. So don't have your babies in a hospital if you can help it. So like I actually had to have like a C-section because I couldn't even go 9 months. But it was like a whole issue, like we don't have to go into. But if you can help it, have your babies at home, do whatever is required in order to make that work out for you. Women, I would say, don't be afraid of it. Women have been doing this for thousands of years, multiple times.
Right.
You know,
Take your kids out of public school, take them out of the
take them out
hospital
of
when you
public
can.
school, homeschool, make the priority, even if it's like financially difficult in a world that we
Yeah.
struggle in to survive. Like, I kind of feel in that like more traditional, I guess I have some more conservative traditional views that I feel if you are in a partnership, whatever way that looks like, and you have one parent who stays at home with kids, raises the kids, manages the home and hearth, does, the education, does the clothing, the clothing of the kids and feeding and all that stuff. And you have the other partner who's handling the other side of that aspect, which is keeping the home and hearth intact financially, the structure of it. And that's that's going into masculine and feminine qualities and roles in relationships. And I mean, sometimes it's the guy who stays home with the kids, which is fine, and the woman is the breadwinner. But whatever way that works out, as long as the kids are in an environment that works in a healthy, productive, normal way, it's just like, not that that's too common, but still,
But no, family over everything. Sara Corss, thank you so very much for coming to the show today. You want to now? Obviously, we are not going to go over all of these links, but you want to tell people how to navigate your site real quick?
Well, you can just go to the site, the Linktree, and see what you want to get into. I have a section for the Time Strider Radio Show, which is primarily on YouTube and Spotify. I have the History Project Digest magazine, which is a magazine that I self-publish, and I write history articles that have a lot to do with a lot of stuff, mostly history, of course. Places where you can find me, obviously with Soundpath to Freedom, which is a music festival. That's a natural law-based music festival. Go and check out the beautiful website that our friend Cynthia designed. And of course, other ways to find me. And if you're bored and want to just chat with me for fun online, sometimes you can join me on Twitch, where I sometimes play live video games. And
What are
I
you
go
What are you
on
playing right
chat.
now?
Right now, I'm playing in Star Wars. I'm playing a Jedi.
Oh, Star Wars. Nice. Okay.
Yeah. So
Dope shit.
yeah. So yeah.
Man,
If you
thank you so very much. Oh, am I cutting you off? Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you so very much again for coming through. Thank you all for, being in the comments and allowing us to riff off of some of your energy here. Shout out to Nick Tensey, Affirm Life Daily, aka Cynthia, Big Sis Mitchell, and tomorrow I have a very special show planned for all of you. Please say have a nice day to Sara Corss, as she will be back, and we want to
Yes.
make sure she feels happy to come back.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
we'll see y'all
Thanks,
tomorrow
guys.
in the next episode.
Thank you. Bye.